You came back in the morning?
Good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers and then we start our Thursday class, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Om Bhur Bhavaswa, Tat Savitra Varenyam, Vargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Nah Prachodayat, Asto Ma Sadgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityorma Mritam Gamya, Om Sahna Bhavatu, Sahna Bhunaktu, Sahviryam Karvavahi, Tejasvinavadhitamastu, Ma Vidveshavai. Om Shanti 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 Om. Okay, we are moving towards the next section. And in this section, another priest, another Vedic scholar, he is asking a question or having a little discussion with Rishi Yajnavalkya. And this Rishi's name is Kahola. And he is a son of Kushtek. So even the parents' names become famous or immortal when the children they are on the good path. So we not only know the names of the rishis, but their fathers also, and sometimes the mothers also. So this section has only one mantra. And over here, we get more knowledge about the Brahma and also the knower of Brahma. And this is in reply to Kahola's question. We may say that exposition given by Rishi Yajnavalkya pertains to what happens to a knower of the absolute and how he will conduct himself in this world after having this great experience of the absolute. In other words, how does this person, after knowing the absolute, that Brahma is everywhere, how does this person behave? So in other words, this section gives us the marks of a sthit pragya. And we learned about this term in Bhagavad Gita. Sthit pragya, who is also a Brahman. And we learned about the qualities of a Brahman too. Totally sattvic person, Brahman. Who is also a Bhagat, the devotee, a Gunatit. So not only sattvic, after establishing himself into the pure sattvikta, he has risen above the Gunatit also. So beyond the gunas. And he's also called a Ati Varna Ashrami. Ati Varna Ashrami. So all these 5 qualities, actually, they are almost synonymous. So whether you call it a Brahman, a Bhagat, Gunatit, or Ati Varna Ashrami, because this kind of a person's consciousness is established in the Supreme, he is called the knower of Brahma, a devotee of Lord. He has transcended these Prakriti's guns, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. And he has transcended all social and religious distinctions. It's almost like when a person wakes up from dream, is not at all concerned with what really happened during dream. what he experienced. The dream could have been very pleasurable or very painful. But a person who has waken up is not concerned about it. The same way this realized person who has realized the absolute is no more attracted or repelled by anything in this phenomenal world. He knows that the mutual attraction and repulsion of the senses and their objects are due to the presence of the Atma, his own self, and that the self in all the same. He also knows that the whole world of sense objects and their interactions are the expressions of oneself. So to him, the world perceived through the senses and the mind is nothing but the pure consciousness. So he sees Brahm everywhere. To him, nothing is external and nothing is internal. So the distinction having been erased out completely, how? By that knowledge of the Supreme. Brahmavid, Brahma eva bhavati. He has got the unshaken conviction that the empirical reality as well as the illusory reality experienced in the waking and the dream states are just, it's like you experience them, just like you experience something in the deep sleep. That's all. Because self stays unchanged. Self retains its pristine purity throughout, whether we are sleeping or whether we are awake. Whether we are studying or whether we are playing, there's never a change in the self. So it remains unchanged, retains its pristine purity throughout. It was like that in the past, it is in the present, and even in the future. Before creation, during manifestation, and after dissolution too. No change in the self. And this is the conclusion we'll see from the exposition given by sage Yajnavalkya in reply to Kahola's question. See, even though we speculate a lot theoretically, we want to know what Atma is. But how do we get the direct experience of Atma? This world we experience through our senses, through our intellect, but it is impossible to have the direct experience by intellect or by metaphysical assertion alone. The actual direct experience by the self, in the self, we hear about it, we read about it in the scriptures. Very logically it's explained. There are a lot of philosophical conclusions about it, but it can never be demonstrated in this physical world. And that's what we saw in the last section also. The example was given like a cow or a horse. So we cannot demonstrate self or the Atma as an object, because it always remains as a subject. But scriptures, these rishis, they keep on prescribing a practical method of attaining the knowledge of the self, so that with those practices we can attain the highest plane of the absolute, that Brahm which is existing everywhere. And definitely it's based on logical and intellectual assertion. So what is the practical method to be adopted by a seeker for the attainment of the Supreme? Because we are the students of the self, the Brahma. We want to know. Because we know only from experience our awakening will happen. So in this section, or I should say in this mantra, the means of liberation, the supreme knowledge of the self, is declared by introducing the subject of renunciation of desire as a precondition. This is what we'll learn in this particular mantra. So the question put by, in the previous section also, by Ushast and Kahola now in this section are practically the same actually. Both of them want to know how to experience it. It seems like a same question, but when we investigate it closely, it becomes very clear that the inquiry in this mantra is made into the real nature of the self and into its attainment through renunciation. And in the last section, the subject matter was its existence independent of the body. So even though they seem like the same questions, but there is a big difference. By knowing whom, one becomes that very self. So this section, with a view to intimate the way of attainment, reintroduces the same question which was put by Ushast in the previous section. We have learned the advantages of the rituals, the rites, combined with meditation, the nature of bondage with its stimulating causes, the condition of a liberated soul, the condition of a person in the state of transmigration, and even the reward for the highest merit. So now in this beautiful mantra, the means of emancipation is described, so that we can strengthen our practice and move towards that highest goal. That is the main reason. It's not that we should give up the rituals and the rites, but we got to understand where we are going, what are we doing, why we are doing it. So let's open our books, page number 218. Ath Hanam Kahola, Koshit Keya, Paprach, Yagyavalkehe iti uvach, Yad ev sakshat prokshat Brahma, Ya Atma sarvantraha tam ve vyachakshva iti esht Atma sarvantraha katmo Yagyavalkyaha sarvantraha. Yo shanyaya piyase shokam moham jaram mrityum etihi etam vetam atmanam viditvaha brahmana putreshnayah cha viteshna yayash lokeshnayascha vyuthataya bhiksharcharyam chiranti yahi eva putreshna sa viteshna ya viteshna sa lokeshna ubhe hi ete eshne eva bhavatah tasmat brahmana pandityam nirvidhye balyen तिष्ठास्तेत बाल्यम च पांडित्यम च निर्विधाय मुनि अमौनम च निर्विधायथ ब्राह्मणा स ब्राह्मणा केन स्यात् येन स्यात् येन दृश एव अतः अन्यातात्रम ततः कहोलः कोश कोशीत केय उपरामः इति पंचम ब्राह्मणम. So just one verse, rather long verse. Let's look at the Sanskrit translation of it. Then Kohala, the son of Kushtika, questioned him. Yagyavalkya, he said, tell me precisely about Brahma that is immediate and direct. The self that is within all. This is your self that is within all. Which is it that is within all, Yagyavalkya? Because very clear answer to his question was, this is yourself that is within all. But he says, which is it that is within all, Yagyavalkya? That which is beyond hunger and thirst, grief and delusion, decrepitude and death. Realizing this very self, Brahmins give up the desire for sons, for wealth, and for worlds, and take up a wandering mendicant's life. That is Ati Ashrama. Because that which is the desire for sons is the desire for wealth. And that which is the desire for wealth is the desire for worlds. For both these are but desires. Therefore, a Brahman having mastered self-knowledge should seek to live on that strength. Having mastered that strength as well as that knowledge, he becomes meditative. And having mastered both meditativeness and its absence, he becomes a real Brahman. How does that Brahman conduct himself? However he may, he is indeed such. All else but this state of Brahmanhood is perishable. Thereupon Kahola, the son of Kushtika, kept quiet. So that means he got the answer to his query. And we can see it very clearly that before that, Ushast took his seat, so he was satisfied. Now the Kahola, the son of Kushtik, is asking this question. As I was saying earlier, that it seems like a same question, but from the answer given by the wise sage Yagyavalkya, we can see that it's not a repetition. Because Kahola wanted to have more information, more knowledge about self from this great rishi. So Yagyavalkya started his answer to Kahola's question on the real nature of the self. That was the very first part of his answer. He said that he who transcends, first of all, he said he is everywhere. He is in all. Then he said, he who transcends hunger, thirst, sorrow, delusion, old age, and death is the self. Self of the eternal nature, which is none other than the Supreme Brahma. So no difference between the Ansh and the Anshi, the part and the whole. So the self in question is beyond all relative attributes. And what are those attributes? Hunger, thirst, etc. And how are they caused? They are caused by these upadhis. English translation for upadhis is limiting adjuncts. The limitations which we have acquired from this nature, prakriti, body, organs, and other necessary constituent factors. It's almost like a blueness attributed by a child to the sky. In reality, does not even touch the sky. The same way the hunger and the other attributes which are superimposed on the self due to ignorance never touch the self. Because self is ever beyond them, untouched by them. This is what this great rishi is implying. So hunger and thirst have their seat in the vital force. Both are vital necessities of the body. And sorrow is a mental dissatisfaction. When the object of our hankering is either not achieved or when it gets snatched away from us, sorrow comes where? In the mind. So it has its seat in the mind. Another thing he mentioned, delusion. Delusion is an error caused by confusion. So that's also an error, delusion, due to wrong notions. And this also resides in our mind. Then somebody might say, how about old age? Old age is indicative of the process of decay which is going on in the body. And it is marked by loss of vitality, eyesight, appearance of wrinkles, gray hair, etc. And we all know that death is the final fall of the body. So this is the attribute of the body, not of the self. So this great rishi is showing that the self transcends hunger and the other attributes of the vital force, mind and the body. So he is laying emphasis on the point that the self is untouched by those as well as all other relative attributes. So these attributes belong either to the physical body or the vital force or the psychological organ. And then another great point he's making, this self, who is the self of all, is unqualified, not limited, not blemished, not modified, and unrelated to the body. Unrelated to the vital force and also the mind. It is complete by itself. And having known that very self, the self as such to be their own self, and eminent in all, free of all limitations, full and eternal, and as a result, having given up the desire or hankering for relationships, like a putreshna, viteshna, lokeshna. This is what he's mentioning in this beautiful mantra. Those wise knowers of Brahm in the past observed, they became mendicant, ati brahmachari, and led the life of renunciates. That's what this mantra says. On ultimate analysis, the aim of the seeker is accepted to be an annihilation of every desire, an activity which is instigated by ignorance. See, Maya has two parts to it. One is vidya, one is avidya. And avidya is the ignorance. Maya, which attributed by the term vidya, that takes us towards this higher place. But the Maya, which is avidya, brings us down. So that's why desire, activity, when they are instigated by ignorance, that means avidya. Desire, which only a form of hankering after a pleasurable experience through different means, ultimately they lead to attachment. And this attachment takes us towards further actions. So avidya, काम or कामनाएं, desires and actions. Higher the ignorance, more the desires. More the desires, more the karma. So that's how we really get caught in this web. And rishis, they called it a hriday granthi. It's a knot, very tight knot, which is binding us. If the seeker realizes the futility of desire for sense objects, he would be able to ward off both the attachment and the resultant action also. Then for whom and for what purpose one would desire or act? After all, this entire lot of misery and grief, death and rebirth is due to the fact that we care for our own selfish ends without knowing the real nature of us. We keep on adding more and more desires on this big ball of desire. In the effort of self-gratification and accumulation of wealth for ourselves, sometimes we neglect even the bare needs and comforts of others. We become so selfish. We even end up using harsh words. We become greedy. We even hurt others. We accumulate wealth, establish our family. We earn name for ourselves. And we think that we are superior to others. Where the scriptures say we are all same. So in this long process of fulfillment of our desires, we become selfish to the core, self-complacent, self-deluded. And our attention is diverted from all those who are our own, because everybody is our own. But selfishness takes us away. And ultimately, this kind of individual attempt for his or her own happiness through improper or even indecent means, assumes larger dimensions. Unless timely action is taken, it brings him to utter annihilation. So, in other words, we were here to move upward, but we did not pay attention to it, and we keep on sliding back. Need for renunciation, need for understanding these desires is very important factor. It is with this purpose in view that scriptures, they talk about the renunciation. These three main desires: desire for progeny, desire for wealth, and the desire for world's name and fame. Upanishads tell us that this is not merely on the ground of theoretical knowledge. There are rishis who have practiced it. And they found that it was the only effective means to realize the spiritual goal. Get rid of the desires. Or at least make them smaller. Instead of making that ball of desire bigger, reduce it. The need to lead the life of a renunciate is encouraged in order to compel the individual to break the walls of narrow limitations created by desire. So again, that putreshna, viteshna, and lokeshna. And it can be possible only by accepting the life of a renunciate. And life of a renunciate is not physical, it's not running away. It is a mental. It's a renunciation, whether we call it virag or sannyas or tyag, it's all mental. For the wise person of ancient times, they realized very well that renunciation was the only means of happiness. And real renunciation fructifies fully when the devil of desire is buried forever. It's not just temporary. With a full knowledge, with a full understanding, practice. Because real happiness in its full-fledged form is wedded to renunciation, virag. And renunciation becomes complete when desires erase from the mind. Only then the subject happiness dawns. Without virag, it's not possible. Knowing all this, the wise people, they turn their back to desires and they redeem this full power of vairagya. Now we are familiar with many, many desires. All different desires are only the modifications of one desire alone. In other words, the different desires are only the different means adopted for the fulfillment of one single desired end. And what is that desire? Happiness. We want things, we want people, we want family, we want name and fame. Why? Happiness. That is the ultimate desire. So this mantra says that desire, although mentioned as threefold, is really one. So whether it's a putreshna or lokeshna or viteshna, it's just one. So desire for progeny is a desire for wealth, and the desire for wealth is desire for worlds. So desire for means in the forms of progeny, wealth, worlds is desire for result, pleasure. So that's why this Rishi is saying there's only one desire, happiness. So what is the solution for the problem of desire? Because if the problem is desire, what is the solution? So this Rishi is prescribing the means as renunciation. The intelligent seeker should know from the teacher and the scriptures all about the self. Then a student should renounce all desires. This is the culmination of the knowledge. Other great rishis said the same thing. Shankaracharya said in his commentary on this verse, he is of the view that since knowledge of the self cannot arise without elimination of desires, the latter is enjoined for the former. Renunciation is completed and strengthened only with the dawn of knowledge. And that's what we were talking about yesterday in our class also. So, virag not as an escaping from this world, virag with the help of the knowledge. Why do I want to have a virag? One should be proficient in scriptural knowledge. That's why we study the scriptures. We want to have more and more understanding what this life is all about and how to experience this ultimate, which is here, but we have not experienced it. How come? What is holding us back? What is that big wall between us and this reality? And that knowledge comes from the scriptures. So we need to become proficient in scriptural knowledge. But learning alone cannot effect cessation of desire. Okay? So renunciation is enjoined with a view to have the knowledge of the self. So one hand, that's why the abhyas and vairagya, they go hand in hand. So we got to have a knowledge of both. How to do the practice, how to move towards that higher goal, and what I need to leave behind, what is not mine. In fact, we practice it all the time. In our daily chores, we do it. From washing the dishes to washing ourselves, washing our hands, walking, cooking, constantly we do these things. Let go what we don't need and move towards what we want to attain. And the same thing goes for this abhyas and vairagya too. So the knower of the self after renunciation is directed to live like a child also. That's another thing we learn from this mantra. Bal. Bal what? It does not mean that he should have all the perversity of a child. He should be childlike, not childish. And we all know the difference between these two words. By childlike, it's a bal what? Does not mean that such a knower should be without the sense of purity and impurity, should freely attend to the calls of nature, irrespective of place and other circumstance. It really means that the knower should be pure without any cunningness, so no impurity. Knower should be without arrogance, without egoism, without sensual passion, like a child. Balvat. Just as the innocent child is the embodiment of simplicity, does not manifest any undesirable trait, will never make a show of his virtues. The same way the knower of Brahm does not make display of himself before others. Doesn't want to show off, is humble. Does not proclaim his learnings, wisdom, divine nature, and goodness. Other people see it from his behavior, but he doesn't announces it. He does not put a big title in front of his name. So Balyen or Balvat, the same thing, Balyen in this mantra. So with the strength born of the knowledge of the self. So the knower of Brahm depends on the strength that comes out of the Atam Gyan. That's what he's talking about. Atam Gyan. Which he possesses, actually which we all possess, but we are not in touch with it. Most of us, we derive our strength from external sources. Whom do we know? Where do we live? What our job is? What our title is? But this person's strength comes from Atam Gyan. Not the physical wealth or the social position. So being free from egoism, vanity, he becomes Muni, ascetic. Nobody knows this person either as noble or ignoble, as ignorant or learned, as well conducted or ill conducted. He is a Brahman. Quietly devoted to the Supreme, the wise person passes his life unknown, walking on this earth. If he were blind, unconscious, and deaf, his real nature and conduct are hidden. He is an ascetic. First, definitely, he got scholarly attainment. Then he got childlike simplicity. Yajnavalkya prescribes continuous meditation to coexist with the previous two conditions. So that means the knowledge is needed, but attention towards our behavior is very important. Balyen. That's what we view in the realized person. Another term came in this mantra is Maun. Maun is enjoined on the individual as an aid to ward off the sense of diversity which might persist in him. Muni means a person who constantly meditates on Brahma. Muni. Mananashil, that's a Muni. Constant meditation is the other observance for a person who's already possessed of all the knowledge and the childlike innocence and possessed of the strength of Atam Gyan. So this kind of a meditation is highly beneficial for a person who has not yet attained complete oneness with the self. So that means that regular, disciplined meditation, study the scriptures, bringing some simplicity in our life. These are all helpful criteria for our own growth. Because if we see it in that Atam Jnani, how did he reach there? And if we want to reach there, then we got to cultivate those qualities. Childlike state has become a Muni. He becomes a Brahman possessed of the knowledge of Brahma, free from all desires. This is what we learned in this great mantra. And now the question is, how does such a Brahman move in the world? What will be the mode of his behavior? Yajnavalkya says that he may adopt any means of conduct. So that means there's no question of external restraint in his case, because he is perfectly moral. He is the embodiment of compassion by his own nature, because he's acting, he's doing everything with the help of his true nature. So compassion is part of his. His spirit is totally otherworldly, but his life is not colorless. Such a person cannot be expected to exhibit even the slightest tinge of recklessness in his behavior. That means all those negative tendencies you will not see in this kind of a person. Whatever he says, whatever he does is in accordance with the Vedic scriptures. And on the other hand, he transforms his energy and expresses it through renunciation of desires and through manifestation of love which is universal, love which is all-embracing. Because he sees Brahm everywhere, so he will not say that these people or this place is better. He sees that one in all. He may be misunderstood as a pessimist. People might call him a parasite of the society, that he doesn't do as much as others do. In fact, every tendency expressed by him is directed towards the infinite, actually. And he is bringing the unending happiness for the whole world, actually. Anything else other than this great reality is perishable, an illusion or dream, a mirage. Anything else other than this self is liable to suffer a lot. So hearing this beautiful exposition of renunciation by the wise knower of Brahma, this priest Kahola withdrew from his debate. So in other words, he was totally satisfied. Next week, we will look at a priest who is a female, Gargi. Gargi will put a question also. So this is the Vedic tradition. It's not based upon the gender, whether it's a female or male, young or old. The Atma is the same. And if we have not realized it yet, with these scriptures, we should get encouraged to practice reduce our desires, watch our behavior, cultivate more knowledge, and keep on moving upward. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much for joining.